This is the story of a simple man named Ethan. He worked at a small toll booth. Day and night, he sat there taking coins from drivers, counting change, and giving receipts. His life was quiet, repetitive, and lonely. Then one day, his coworker Mike came to him and said, "Ethan, can you do me a little favor tonight? Nothing serious, just deliver a bag and you'll get paid for it." Ethan didn't think much of it and agreed. That single decision changed his life forever. That night, he unknowingly became the driver in a bank robbery. When he realized what was really happening, the police were already everywhere. Alarms screamed, lights flashed, and bullets started flying. Ethan was caught holding the bag full of stolen cash. He tried to explain that he had no idea what was going on, but no one believed him. The real thief, Mike, disappeared, and the innocent man went to jail. The judge sentenced him to 3 years in prison. When the heavy iron gate slammed shut behind him, Ethan's world fell silent. He found himself among men hardened by violence and time. There, he met a prisoner named Victor. Victor was clever, confident, and talkative, the kind of man who could sell snow in winter. At first, Ethan stayed away from him. He didn't belong in a place like that. But Victor saw something in him. Patience, calm, maybe quiet intelligence. One afternoon, while they ate in the prison cafeteria, Victor said, "You know, Ethan, the difference between a crook and a genius is just planning." Ethan gave a small smile. He had lost everything, yet Victor's odd optimism felt infectious. Days turned into months, and the two slowly became friends. Ethan listened to Victor's ideas about life and freedom, and Victor respected Ethan's honesty. Then, one night, when the lights went out, Victor whispered something that would change both their futures. "There's a bank," he said softly, "and next to it stands an old theater. An underground tunnel connects the two. The passage has been closed for years. Nobody even remembers it exists." Ethan frowned. "So what? You can't rob a bank from inside a cell." Victor smiled in the darkness. "Who said anything about robbing it from here? I'll get out someday, and when I do, I'll need someone who can plan, not panic." For the first time in years, Ethan felt a spark of curiosity, a reason to think beyond the prison walls. At night, they studied the city's old blueprints that Victor had somehow smuggled in. They traced every street, every pipe, every corner of the abandoned theater that led straight to the bank vault. Victor's voice echoed in Ethan's mind. "We don't break the law. We just bend it." Months later, Ethan finally got parole. Victor still had a few years left to serve, but before they parted, Victor said quietly, "When you're free, look for the Theatre Royale. That's where our fortune lies, literally under the stage." Ethan walked out of prison a free man, but he was no longer the same person. He had a purpose now. And maybe, for the first time in his life, a plan. When Ethan reached the Theatre Royale, he was stunned by what he saw. The place was falling apart. Dusty seats, cracked walls, and a single broken spotlight hanging from the ceiling. He stepped onto the stage. Every sound echoed. His footsteps, his heartbeat, his breath. Something about that place felt alive. Then he met Emma, the young actress who was rehearsing there. Her laughter filled the hall, and her passion for the stage made the whole place feel warm again. Ethan didn't tell her why he was there. He only said he liked the theater and wanted to help repair it. Day after day, they worked together, Emma teaching him about acting and expression, and Ethan helping with repairs and props. Slowly, friendship turned into something deeper. For the first time in years, Ethan began to feel alive. Yet, somewhere in the shadows, the old plan with Victor waited. Days passed. Ethan's life started to find rhythm again. He was happy fixing the old theater, listening to Emma rehearse, and sharing quiet moments that made him forget everything else. But destiny wasn't done testing him. One evening, as Ethan was cleaning the stage lights, the theater door creaked open, and there he was. Victor, out of prison. Same confident smile, same spark in his eyes. "Miss me?" he said with a smirk. Ethan froze. He couldn't believe it. Victor had actually come back, and he hadn't forgotten their plan. That night, under the stage lights, Victor showed Ethan the same blueprints they had studied in prison. He pointed to the floorboards and whispered, "Right under this stage, the old tunnel still exists. Beneath that tunnel lies the vault of the bank. We're sitting right on top of our treasure." Ethan stared at him quietly. He didn't answer, but his silence said everything. From that night onward, the two men began digging. By day, the theater filled with music and laughter as Emma practiced her lines. By night, Ethan and Victor worked below, digging through dirt, drilling through concrete, inch by inch moving closer to the bank's vault. Victor was thrilled. He called it their masterpiece, but Ethan, every time he heard Emma's laughter echoing above, his heart grew heavier. He wasn't sure anymore what he really wanted, the money or the life he had found with her. Then one evening, as Ethan came up from the tunnel, his clothes covered in dust, he saw Emma standing there, watching him. "Ethan," she said softly, "what are you doing down there?" Ethan froze. He could have lied, but after everything she had done for him, he couldn't. He told her everything, how he was framed years ago, how he met Victor in prison, and the plan to reach the bank vault through the tunnel. Emma was silent for a long moment. Then she looked straight into his eyes and said, "You've spent your whole life letting other people decide who you are, Ethan. Maybe it's time you decide for yourself." Her words pierced his heart. For the first time, Ethan saw clearly. He didn't need money. He needed peace. But Victor wasn't about to stop. The next night he came with more tools and blueprints. "We're almost there," Victor said. "Just one more week and we'll be rich. You can play the good guy later. Right now, help me finish this." Ethan didn't argue. He just stared at Victor, silently wishing he'd stop. But Victor's obsession only grew stronger. Late one night, when the city slept, they finally broke through the last slab of concrete. A sharp, metallic clang echoed in the dark. They had reached it, the floor of the bank vault. Victor dropped his tools and laughed, his voice full of excitement. "We did it, Ethan. We actually did it." Through the small opening, they could see stacks of gold and cash inside the vault. Victor's eyes sparkled. Ethan just stood there, numb. He wasn't looking at the money. He was thinking of Emma. The next morning, Emma arrived early at the theater for rehearsal. But when she stepped onto the stage, she heard something strange. A dull rumbling beneath her feet. Curious, she pulled up a floorboard and froze. The tunnel. She looked down and saw Victor loading bags of cash. Ethan stood behind him, motionless. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling, "what are you doing?" Ethan looked up at her, guilt in his eyes. "I don't know anymore," he said quietly. And then, sirens. Police cars surrounded the street outside. Someone had triggered the alarm. Victor panicked. He grabbed a gun and shouted, "We have to move! She's seen too much." Ethan stepped forward instantly, blocking his aim. "No, Victor." Not her. Chaos erupted. The police broke through the front door, shouting orders. Victor fired one wild shot and tried to escape through the tunnel. But before he could, the weakened wooden floor collapsed under his feet. Ethan lunged forward to save him. But the entire section of stage gave way, and Victor fell into the tunnel. Buried beneath the same earth they had dug night after night, the dream they built together vanished in seconds, swallowed by dust and silence. The police arrested Ethan again. He didn't resist. He looked back at Emma one last time as they took him away in handcuffs. But Emma didn't abandon him. She visited him in prison, week after week, month after month. One day, during one of her visits, she smiled through the glass and said, "The theater's opening again. We're doing a new play, a story about a man who tried to change his fate." Ethan chuckled softly. "Sounds like someone I know." Emma leaned closer. "Maybe when you're out, you can play the lead." For the first time in years, Ethan smiled. A real smile. He wasn't thinking about money or banks or tunnels. He was thinking about life and how even behind bars it finally felt meaningful. Years later, Ethan was released. The first place he went wasn't home. It was the theater. It was shining again. Crowds filled the seats. The lights were bright and the air was alive with applause, and there on the stage stood Emma, performing the story of his life. He stood quietly at the back, eyes glistening. As the audience rose to their feet, Emma's gaze wandered across the crowd and found him. No words, just a small, knowing smile, the kind that says, "You made it." Ethan smiled back. For a man who had once lost everything, he had finally found what truly mattered: redemption, love, and peace.